You can't want something and not put in the effort to get it. If you want something and you're passionate about putting in the work to get it, and you really, really authentically do that over time, you will either one, get it, or second, land in a place where you may realize you didn't even want it and you're in a better place than you were when you started.
Hello, everyone. We're talking to Joe Chura from Chicago, and he's got a phenomenal story of getting an idea and making something big happen with it in a niche and kind of grabbing the momentum. And so I'm sure he's learned lots of things from that. So, Joe, congratulations on your success, founder of Go Brewing. Scale started with an idea. You went to 6,000 plus locations in over 20 states, award winning non alcoholic craft beer in under 3 years. So, most great people want to move fast, and you certainly did. And you've also built and sold two tech startups for over 200 million. And anyway, so lots of things to get into, lots of new products and things like that. So, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So, where did the name Go Brewing come from?
It's our just do it. It's go, stop overthinking. I mean, exactly what you and I just talked a few seconds before the podcast started. And the whole mentality you have about, taking an idea and making something happen. That's literally where the name came from, is that not only from a health and wellness standpoint, but from an entrepreneur standpoint to anything in life, we overcomplicate things. And oftentimes the best thing you could do is just take the first step.
And so, how did you get to the point? What do you think were the main things that formed you and got you to the point to where you could get the idea and launch? Because there's a lot of, I think you started with a lot of experience, insights, and that maybe not everybody has. And, you know, you, you worked your way through. This couldn't have been your first success, let's say.
Well, it's what I'm doing now is hardly a success. I think it's hopefully a success in the making, because there's a lot in front of me. And I learned that also is that success was a funny word. And like I used to tell people when I was growing the last companies, and they're like, don't you look around and see, you have 450 employees. You sit around and just think about how successful you are. I'm like, this can go away tomorrow. Like, so no, I don't. I don't think about it at all. I think about how do I move forward. And I said, if I ever have an exit, then please say that again. And that's a defining moment that you can't take away. And at that point, like something's probably not going to happen to take that away. So, but it's funny because after I did have those exits, I still didn't feel like a success. Like I felt like, oh, I have a lot more to prove. And is that it? Is that the meaning and of life? To have this financial success and to sell businesses, and I was extremely grateful. I felt very lucky and very, very fortunate in many ways, but I still have a trouble calling myself a success. But I will say, like, that mindset really started by a very odd set of circumstances where I was working on the Ford Chicago assembly line and coming from a place where I really wasn't a good student. I didn't really have a great work ethic, but I was thrusted into this position of like working on this line when I was 20 years old. And I did that because I found out I was going to be a father at a very young age and needed a good job. I needed a job with benefits. And at that time, what I realized is the only way to make the most of my time at Ford, because I didn't want to stay there forever, was to enroll in school. And that's when I learned the law of incrementality and doing something over and over again in short bursts of time for a very long time, that you can achieve amazing things that you would never thought of possible. And in my case, it was reading 15 seconds of textbooks in between building the 1998 Ford Taurus. So I would read, put on my parts, read again. And I did that for 8 to 10 hours a day for 5 years. And I graduated magna cum laude. And I was just like, whoa, how did I even like graduate with honors? And it was just this, again, happenstance situation where I didn't wanna be a human robot, so I'm like, "I'm gonna take this spare time that we might throw away 15 seconds and think it's nothing, but 15 seconds over the course of 5 years, for 72 times an hour is a lot of time." And, I would learn to retain, and I think that was a big unlock for me that, like, "Oh, I have so much more potential than I thought I had. I wasn't a loser that I thought I was."
Yeah, and, why would you have thought that you were a loser?
Well, I mean, loser might be a harsh word, but, like, I was 20 years old. I literally was living on a futon mattress, prior to me finding out I was gonna be a father. I didn't really have, any sort of ambition. So, I mean, and I was my father lived in a trailer at the time. Like, I didn't have a lot going for me, and now I had this weight of having a kid, and I couldn't even take care of myself, and I felt like I was at that point in my life, like, I felt that's the way I felt. It's like, "Man, I really fucked up already." Like,
Yeah,
you know?
there goes my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, I mean, it was yeah, it was, and then, the other side of that is, like, I was watching my father and mother got a divorce in my late teens, and I was watching his demise at the same
Yeah,
time, what happened with his life
uh-huh.
and the things that he did the opposite of what I thought my mother would look back and be like, "Oh, I made a mistake." He did the opposite. He did the things where my mom's like, "Yeah, see, I made the right decision." And I was watching myself kind of like in this position where I know I had like 2 roads to go down, and very soon after I had my child, my child's mother and myself, we broke up, so I was felt like I just fast forwarded to the same position my father was in. So it was like a lot of that weight was, like, on me, and I was like, "Man, what did I do?"
Yeah, well, that's why I think your story can be, very encouraging and inspiring to a lot of people. Because there's probably 1,000,000 people in the United States right now feel the same way. Found because you grow up and you get yourself in situations, lumbering along, making decisions in the moment, not thinking of the long-term consequences, and no one's ever mentioned that you should think of the long term. Planning is not a real big of thing of what, uh is in the educational system. Money management, planning for success. It'd be nice if they mentioned that somewhere along the way in our educational system so you can at least get the words or the concept in there. Like, you are going to have a life. The decisions you make are going to have consequences. And you might think about the future while you're doing these things, but that doesn't happen. So people find themselves in that situation. Where did the idea sneak into your head about I have had those, I've had key ideas got in my head at an early age that I use even today, and I don't even know where they came from. Do you know where that idea of incremental progress, over a period of time, how that 15 minutes here and there. How did you get that in your head?
I didn't think about it. I just started doing it. It wasn't like I was like, "Oh, if I do this, I could accomplish X." It was, "Okay, what what really happened is I'm at the plant, and if anyone's been into assembly plant, they could relate. If not, it's hard to really imagine, but you're in this huge factory, and you're with a ton of people, like, in the plant at any given time, there's, like, 1,000 to 2,000 workers, and Ford, you're a UAW, worker, so you're part of the, union, and you're working for Ford, so you get really good benefits. One of the benefits is after 30 years, you can retire with a pension. So the conversation on breaks and around the plant was, "How many years do you have? How many years do you have left to retirement?" And that was the status quo. And when I started to hear that day after day, month over month, of I have only 20 years left. I've been here 10 years. I have 26 years left. I've been here 4 years. I have 5 years left. I was looking at folks, and they're amazing humans. It has nothing to do with that. But I was looking at them and I was like, "I don't wanna be here for 30 years to just retire." Like, that's the only thing I thought of. And then the next thing was, "Okay, what can I do about it?" Okay, I could leave. Alright, I'm not very marketable, and I'm actually in a very fortunate position to have a job at 20 that I did, with benefits and with all that stuff. So it was very, very lucky to be able to get in the plant. So I'm there, gotta make the most of it. The only thing I could think of is I gotta go to school because that's the only chance I have to not be here in 30 years.
Growing up, did you have any pictures of success or, it's more like it's not, the way to think of it is, have you had success rather than are you a success? The thing is because success comes and goes, but it's nice to have some achievements along the way that you can say, at least that happened or this happened, and like what's going to happen tomorrow? I don't know. I got to fight for it. I'm not guaranteed anything, but you can say that, I have experienced some successes along the way. You certainly can. So, where did you get any pictures of that growing up in sports, athletics, friends, neighborhood, where at least the concept of winning and losing in life was something. You know, there was some kind of picture of a better life and that would inform some of your choices later on.
There was, a lot of little moments, and I would say that generally I was a good athlete. I went to a very prominent Chicago high school for the first 2 years called Mount Carmel, and I went there and I played basketball there, and I was in a slam dunk contest with some NBA people that turned out to go to the NBA and NFL, and, I was just loved playing sports. So I would say I had success in that aspect from a, uh, standpoint of, like, being a likable person and being popular. I think I fit those buckets as well. What really changed for me is in my junior year of high school or the end of my sophomore year of high school, I got called to the office because it was a private Catholic school. My parents had just got a divorce and they weren't paying the tuition anymore. And I was embarrassed and I said, "Well, I don't wanna go here if we're not paying the tuition," and obviously, they would've kicked me out anyway, and it was just embarrassing, so I was like, "Let's go to the public school." Well, that decision, changed my life in a major way because, Mount Carmel is an all-boys school, very focused on athletics and academics. You graduate from there, you got a good shot at getting into a really good college. We had, like, tier 1 or D1 schools always in our gym recruiting athletes. So I had, like, a lot of opportunity to do something through athletics at that school. Well, when I decided, like, "Okay, I don't wanna face that," and I didn't fight it, I didn't, like, question my parents a lot, it was just easier just to move on and go to a public school. That changed the game because I ended up, uh, getting my own I shared an apartment with my father, but I basically had my own apartment, and then I became the most popular person, not because I was cool, because I had a place everyone could party, and those decisions it became debauchery and craziness, and all of a sudden I went from this athlete to kinda like what I turned into of, like, a lost kinda person. It was super fun. It
Yeah.
was I was the life of the party but it was, like, nonstop. But I did have those wins early on, and I do remember there was a point in time where I was handed this, as a gift. My friend's parents, who I ended up living with, somehow, like, during that time period during high school for a period of time, and, she gave me this poster, and it said, "Justification for higher education," and it was a house in the mountains with Ferraris and, like, nice cars in front of the house. It was just, like, this illustration, and I didn't think much of it, but I, like, remember that picture in my head as, like, this kind of vision board, and it always stuck with me, and I actually went to look for it, like, a couple weeks ago, and to find I don't have it anymore. As I started to do things and get, like, tastes of success, I kept thinking about that, like, let me like, um is that something I wanna strive for? And I would say that, like, when you're like, now I look at those tangible things as, like, not super important in the scheme of things, but it helped me really start to strive for something, even though, again, it turned out like that's not the meaning and that will not give you happiness, these, expensive things, but, like, I ended up with that. I ended up with a house in
Yeah.
Tahoe with nice cars. It almost looked like that house. And it's, like, insane to me that, like, that happened, and I still don't know how it happened. I feel so fortunate the fact that those things connected somehow, but once you get that, and then I remember also a couple other things that really kinda just, like, stuck in my head. I was in trouble as a kid, and I was grounded in my room, and I had a basketball game that night, and I just laid in my bed, and I had a basketball in my hand, and I just visualized. Yeah, I didn't even know what
Yeah.
visualization was. It
Right.
wasn't even like a
Yeah.
thing that like, no one talked about that, like, there was no internet, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just visualizing myself making these hoops, and I go to the game that night, and I could not miss. I got 21 points in the first quarter, could not miss, and I just it stuck with me. I was like, you're what you think about and then if you put action behind it, and if you really strive for that and you take those steps, it's very possible to make things happen in life that you wouldn't think you could otherwise.
Yeah, and this is exactly the kinds of things that people never hear people like yourself talk about. It's like how you thought, in your formative years, how you looked at things, because then you can see how it played out over, it developed and played out over the years because, we can't escape our beginnings. And somehow, if early on, somehow life causes you to click over into a right kind of thought pattern, you recognize patterns or something like that, light bulbs go on early on, you can reference those the rest of your life because those are your that's your experience. No one can ever take that from you. That night you were in there, visualizing that, the ball going in the hoop and then you going out and making it happen. Nobody can ever take that from you. And so, as you play that forward, you're now here's another miracle. You're in there uh, uh, at Ford on the production line in the factory, and then all of a sudden down the road, you've built and sold 2 tech startups for $200 million. How do you connect those dots?
This is what you're
Who
saying is so true. It's like the dots connect backwards, not forward in life, right? So
Yeah,
what you're saying is very true.
yeah,
So what happened was once I graduated, I was able to, and this is a long story in itself, but get out of the plants and still work for Ford and get to the marketing and sales division. How I did that was like another story, but it was pretty remarkable in the sense of like being so naive and breaking down barriers that were seemed impossible. But I ended up making that happen, and then went to the sales and marketing division, and it was in the early 2000s, and I was like the representative for Ford Motor Company to car dealers. That was my job. So I would go in there and I would look at their inventory and I would look at their financial statements. And I would try to be kind of like a consultant, but the reality of like my job was I needed to sell them cars constantly. And I was the conduit between the Ford production plant and what's on the car dealer lot. And anything that I put in front of them, I would have to justify it by, "Hey, you sold this many cars per month. We have these coming in. It'll take us 90 days to get them. You need to take 90 Focuses right now." And that's what I was doing, and I was fairly good at it 'cause, I had, like, a lot of cred from being at the plant. Like, people were like, "Oh, like, you're just not from some fancy college." So it really helped me develop this respect immediately for car dealers because he knew I, you know, came from there. But what ended up happening is it was also the advent of kind of the internet for car dealers. And they like were a lot of them were struggling with like, are these real leads that are coming in over the internet? Are these real people? They're used to have phone calls and fax machines, and they're like, this is gonna be a fad. I happened to be like into computers when I was a kid, and when the internet started to blossom in the early 2000s, I was like, this is the future. So I was an advocate and I would help them understand and do things for them to help maximize their internet sales. And
yeah.
that led me to really understanding the car dealer side of things, which then led me to build a marketing agency to cater to them. So you can see how that connects now. So after 10 years, left Ford, ended up running a car dealership for a couple of years. So I got that experience and then ended up creating my own digital marketing agency with a couple folks. And then all we focused on is trying to drive traffic, website traffic to these car dealers' websites. And that was like step one.
And you built software to do that, type thing and process and all of that stuff?
I'm not a simple person. So no, I didn't just do that. That was a marketing company. And then like 2 years later, I created a software company, another company. And then that company then created car dealer websites. And it's arguably number one in market share today, works with every OEM, 8,000 car dealers or so. and built that. And those two connected really drove this like enterprise value. And then the software company had a lot of lessons early on of me listening to podcasts of how to structure a company. So that's why it was a separate entity. It was a C corporation. The other one was a S corp, and I knew the multiple on the software company would be higher. So I was striving for that. So I taught myself, okay, this is how I should create it. If I ever sell it, I could have a tax benefit. And sure enough, like 5 years later, I ended up selling both companies. I had about $40 million in annual recurring revenue at that point. Huge growth. And that's kind of the long short of it.
Well, the thing is, let's point out now, for people, those millions of people that are stuck in the kind of, they may be at the point where they feel like they've screwed up their life or they're, it's hopeless or whatever. What you did that got you going was you kept moving forward. This idea of, I've got 15 minutes. I can use that 15 minutes, 8 hours a day. I get these
Seconds.
15
Yeah.
minute, yeah.
Seconds.
And uh, and then over 5 years it compounds and I guess you got to the degree, right? And you got, you worked your way up to where now you probably got some attention inside because there's probably not everybody in the factory doing this. So you probably got the attention of the executive wing. And so when you raised your hand, I don't know the process, but if you raised your hand and said, I'd like to get out of this thing and move up, somehow they were receptive and you probably got additional training there. Would that be, but like you said, it's over 10 years, this transformation. So the thing is, when you look back 10 years later, it seems like it's fast. While you're going through the 10 years, it seems like 100 years, doesn't it?
Yeah, things happen slower than fast for sure. I do want to say that when I graduated, that was an eye-opening disappointment because I did think people would notice because uh, I would literally create, I'd go to the plant manager on breaks, go to secretary, and I would schedule meetings to show him what I was working on in school. I would talk to every single supervisor there, gearing myself up for the day I graduated. And then I graduated, and guess what? Nothing happened. No one gave a shit. And I tell this to kids all the time. I tell this to kids. This is really important. I started to feel sorry for myself, and I was like, I did all this stuff. I worked I worked my ass off. I graduated magna cum laude in college while working on the Ford line, right? This, and this. People would look at that, acknowledge it, like, yeah, that's awesome. Then they move on. They would do their thing. And then I didn't make any traction at the plant at all. Then one day this engineer comes up to me, and now I am telling the story. I think it's important though. This engineer comes to me and he goes, "Hey, I know you've been talking to me every day about like a job here. I just saw a posting for a marketing and sales job. I think you'd be awesome for it." And I was like, "Really?" So the next break I had, I run over to a station. There's these big tube computers, like it's nothing like
Yeah.
we have today. And I look and there's this like very basic like job description. I was like, "Oh my God, marketing and sales for Ford. Like, where is this?" I'm like, "It's 2 cities over. That's incredible." Like, I didn't know that was even here. I thought Ford
Yeah.
was in Michigan, like,
Yeah.
and I was just like, "This is a dream." And he's like, I go, "Hey, do you mind if I use your computer and apply for this job?" And he's like, "Sure, go for it." So I start to fill out the application, and then it asks me for my Ford salary ID number. I wasn't a Ford salary ID employee. So I could not hit submit on the application. So I walked away and I was like even more pissed, defeated, and I'm like, "Jesus Christ." And then I did something that changed my life. I turned around and I don't know why I thought of this. I go, "Can I apply as you to this guy?" I go, "Can I use your ID and apply as you for this job?" And he said, "Sure." So I applied for this job at Ford as Willis Chin. We look nothing alike, and ended up getting a call. I mean, I put all my information there, obviously I didn't put his, resume in there, but, like, put all my info in there, and it was, like, almost like I submitted it. It wasn't even questioned, like, "Why did you submit it as this guy?" And it just goes to show you, like, there is ways around things in life. There is so much stuff that seems an obvious blocker, but if you're creative and you could think around it, you can get through it most of the time.
And I think that determination comes from what you had done up to that point. It's like, it's something inside you said, no, you know, I'm not going to take that. Now, what I thought you were going to do is say you made up a number and submitted it. And
Yeah. I
because,
mean, it wouldn't allow me to, like,
yeah,
but yeah, I would
yeah,
have tried for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
But, anyway, the thing is that, you go in and, you get the thing but, your same approach that you'd use to get to the job when you got the marketing job and you got the training allowed you to max out in that situation. That had to be a big transition, a big transformation for you too, because now you're learning things that have the sky's the limit. When you're learning things on the production line, the manufacturing line, you're learning things that are not sky's the limit, But when you get out of that, you get into marketing and dealerships, and now the sky's the limit. Would you say? Is that a good
This is
description?
this is such a good point. So here's the reality of it. I'm at the plant, and to your earlier question, you're like, "Did I have success or did I see success?" And I would say my success that I saw in my world is very limited. Like, I didn't, the most successful people I saw was, like, my father's family's company, and I would say that arguably wasn't super successful at that time. So I didn't one point in time, I think it was, but at the time I lived, it wasn't. So, like, I didn't see that. So I didn't have that. At the plant, I saw supervisors walking around with walkie-talkies outside of the line, outside the production line, commanding respect. That's who I wanted to be. That was my dream. That was my life goal because that's all I saw. That is all I saw. So to your point, I get outside the plant. Now I'm seeing car dealers. I'm seeing these guys that are millionaires, sometimes billionaires. Some of the most wealthy people I know are car dealers. And I start to see them and I'm like, "Whoa, this is really exciting to see this." So then my dream shifted of I want to be a car dealer. Like my then thing was I want to do that. I met my wife and we actually had maybe a little bit of an opportunity. Well, in fact, I left for to be a car dealer because that's how much I believed in it. But then I had an opportunity maybe to go relocate with my wife and like actually buy a car dealership and all that. And she's like, absolutely not. She goes, you can do way other things. I give her so much credit. And at the time when I met her, she exposed me to people that were way more successful than anyone I'd met in that space, like people that had these mega yachts and all that stuff. Again, I'm not a big believer in tangible things today, but it helped me realize that what the potential was out there, and I was so limited by what I saw. Like, a fish only knows the fishbowl he's in, and that's where I was. Like, so every kind of these defining moments, I was in this bigger environment, opening up my world to finally I was just like, "Whoa, like, I could do anything. Like, I could do any of this stuff." And then I started to educate myself through podcasts, and that's what I was alluding to earlier. I listened to 100 episodes of this podcast called This Week in Startups, and ended up hiring the attorney that advertised on there to help me build my C corporation. Very similar to what I was talking about working at the Ford line. People say they don't have time. You have time. You're commuting, you're getting groceries at the grocery store, you're doing something mundane that you could take 15 minutes a day and learn. Not 15 seconds like I did every minute. That's not very feasible unless you're working at the production plant, but 15, 20 minutes a day, stack that over time. It's incredible the amount of stuff you can learn.
And the thing is, as you get in these environments where you're meeting, you're talking, you're dealing with millionaires, billionaires, and they're asking you for your opinion, you're having conversations, it has a transforming effect on you because you realize, these are just people just like me. They know more, they've done more, they've got exposure. And it helps you go through the transformation of realizing I'm not an inferior, they don't see me as an inferior type person. They see me as somebody who's got some information they need and they're paying attention. And you get your posture every a lot a lot of the way people treat you comes from where you're positioned in life. But when you get out there and you're going into their dealership and you're solving problems for you're the answer man. You're the golden, you're the Pied Piper. Let's they're gonna brighten up when they see you come in there, and then, magic can start to happen in your own mind, and that's what happened. You came up with this idea. Now, we gotta work on you because you gotta realize you're a stinking success. Okay. You're a stinking success. You built something that you sold and now is still going on, number one in the world. Okay. Whether you're there or not, you're responsible for that. Okay. That's your success. I want you to get that out of your mind. Okay. And
Fair enough, fair enough. That was a
you,
success. I could say that was a success. I'm working
that
on the next one right now.
Well, it's continuing to be a success because how you structured it. You didn't structure a house of cards. It wasn't a gimmicky thing. It wasn't a David Blaine magic trick that you pulled on them and sold to them. I mean, it was a legitimate business solution, and that was a success. And so I don't want to hear any more about you not being a success anymore. Okay.
It's well, I mean, you know this, Larry, you gotta prove it every day, right? You like, I don't like to live in the past. I don't like to say, like, I talk about this story because I think it's important for people, but the reality is, I sold these companies in 2018. I don't wanna be, in 30 years from now talking about what I did in 2018. I wanna say, "Okay, I did these other things too." It's these other things pose a lot of risk, right? There's a lot of things I'm doing right now that could go away tomorrow again. And that's the mindset I've had is I wanna be so hungry to prove it that I don't wanna be like, "Oh, I did this. This is a layup." It's not a layup. I put in the same amount of effort that I did since, day 1 at the plant today to this business.
Well, and also what you're doing now is a product thing, it's a thing, and it's a whole nother thing. You got to make it, store it, deliver it. You got when demand goes through the roof. And I want to talk about all of that on our second part. But but you still, are my notes right that you're still advising these companies in the car business? You still have an advisory role inside of there?
Yeah, it's sold to cars.com, publicly traded company, amazing company. So many great things have happened. I stayed on as the CEO of the companies I sold to him. To your point, it wasn't a house of cards. We tripled our revenue since I sold to them. And then, became the chief innovation officer at Cars, and then now I'm, advisor.
And so, I mean, that's an incredible position. And also, it shows you the impact that you're still having there, because of your insight, you're allowing them to stay on track and not do stupid things like Cracker Barrels just did. And you know
I
what
yeah. Fortunately, I don't have that much, I'd say anymore, but, like, I'm still connected by a thread, but it's been a great experience. But, yeah, there's a lot of cautionary tales out there.
right. Now, I'm gonna give you a chance to wrap this up, this first part, public part of the thing before we go behind closed doors and we get into your whole next thing, which is the founder of Go Brewing and all of those adventures, a whole new industry. I can't wait to get into that. But to wrap up this phase of it, what would you say for the people who've listened to this part and are on their journey up the ladder? What kind of takeaway would you want them to have from what we've covered so far?
Larry, what do you feel like the biggest struggle is for those people? If there is one?
Well, I don't know. I think it depends on the individual, but it does come down to belief. I think a lot of it has to do with their belief. But it's interesting that you would ask that. I think everybody is different, but if they're wondering now, it's like, can I do it? Basically is where most people stall out on.
It helps me frame my answer because there's a lot of, directions you could go, but I will say that if you want it, and this is the thing I see is missing from a lot of people, they might say they want something, but you can't want something and not put in the effort to get it. If you want something and you're passionate about putting in the work to get it, and you really, really authentically do that over time, you will either one, get it, or second, land in a place where you may realize you didn't even want it and you're in a better place than you were when you started. So there is no downside to working your ass off to try to achieve what you think is real. And like I said, my goal was to own a car dealership. and I ended up somewhere else, right? We're about to talk about a non-alcoholic brewery. Like, how did we get there? But like the reality is, I I ended up in a better place than I thought I was going to be in because I put in the work and I continue to do so today. So anyone listening to this, if you're not in the spot, you have to honestly ask yourself, do I really want this? And I see so many people that passively want something, but they don't really either want it or put in the work to get it.
Well, and I would say to you also to bring out your example for people that may be, uh, struggling at that point. The thing is timing. You made, like you said, you made everybody you were showing everybody, "I'm getting my degree. I'm doing this. Here's the projects I'm working on." And, to let them know, "I wanna move up." And so you get the degree and then crickets, nothing. But you did make an impact. I mean, that letting people know did have an impact because when it just was the timing was not right. Because if you had the timing, if something had come up along that time, it could have been a lesser opportunity, but the right that's why I believe in divine intervention in a lot of our lives. So that, people call it luck or whatever, but for the right opportunity came along down the road because I think they were all aware, you wanted to move up, you have potential, but it just wasn't the right opportunity. So when the right one came, this guy went out of his way to mention it to you and then let you use his own ID, uh, his computer, his name, and everything so you could get it. So just because things don't happen right now, folks, don't give up. Don't think that, your efforts are not going to pay off. It could just be a timing thing. Stay on the attack.
You know what's crazy, Larry? Just to wrap this up, today, or not today, but like in the last like year, I probably got 4 messages from people that were in those rooms or people I talked to or people that saw me at that point trying to do and they trying to move my way up. And their response is, I remember you at the plant and how ambitious you were. It is incredible to see what you've accomplished. I just wanted to reach out and say congratulations. And for those people to say that, because sometimes you live in this like world where you're like, did that even really happen? Like, and then I get this reaffirmation often to say like, yeah, give me a call. Like this engineer wanted me to give him a call. I haven't touched base with him yet, but like about, and I talked to this, now this was like a long time ago. And for them to even have that impact, right? Now they saw it and they see where I ended up and they're like, holy shit. No, it's wild. So just keep going.
Yeah, and because a lot of times we do feel like we're talking out in the Grand Canyon. We never hear an echo back from all of this noise we're putting out there, but that it is reverberating out there, and eventually you keep going and you will hear back. So, keep on. Thanks so much for being on and sharing, Joe.
You're welcome.